Welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, we're not going to talk about an alien invasion. We will discuss the future of AI. John Kramer returns to jigsaw the timeline yet again, and Martin Scorsese returns with an epic crime biopic. Stay right there. B&B is up next.
Caitlin Dever must hide and escape from a home invader in one of the most suspenseful scenes from No One Will Save You, currently streaming on Hulu. Bryan.
Yeah.
Part of this movie's deal is that there is no dialogue. There's sound,
yes,
but no one's speaking to each other in this film. Did this gimmick work for you?
You know what? It is a gimmick, but I like it. And we got another movie coming out that's like that later this year that I'm extremely excited for. But when I heard that they were doing this movie like this, where it's no dialogue and you do have sound and sound effects and things of that nature, I was like, huh, that's interesting. I was like, can this sustain an hour-and-a-half movie?
Right.
And I was a little cautious about that aspect of it. But overall, I thought it worked, and I thought they were able to really tell a story focused on Caitlin Dever's character, because it feels more than just like an alien invasion. Well, the movie kind of, I don't want to spoil anything, honestly, but I don't want to give.
Honestly, like when I was a kid, there was a G.I. Joe comic where Snake Eyes was on a mission and there was no dialogue, and I loved that issue.
In the comic, there's no
word balloons whatsoever. And so anytime I come across a movie like this or another comic book that tries to go dialogue-free, I compare it to that G.I. Joe comic. And is it as good as that G.I. Joe comic? And I think that this movie stretches credibility maybe a few too many times. I think there are sequences where something has to happen to prevent characters from speaking to each other. And in one occasion that's successful, in another occasion I think it's less successful. And frankly, you know, if these home invaders were in my house, I would be saying something to them. It might not be polite, but I'd be saying something to them. I feel like there needs to be words in this. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the gimmick worked for me. And by I don't know, I mean it did not work for me.
It didn't work. Okay. No, I get that. And I agree. I do think there are certain scenes, and I was interested to see how that was going to play out, especially like when you start to learn a little bit of the dynamics between her and other characters in that town. And when she runs into those characters, you would assume that there would be
history there, right? There's a darkness in her past that is haunting her, and I enjoyed all of that, and I really liked the narrative that's happening in this film. I just have to ask myself, does the movie benefit not having any dialogue? And I don't think it does. I think it is a gimmick for a gimmick's sake. The invader element of the story is great, and the escalation of that invader and how it does play into a certain mythology is a lot of fun. You know, if we're going to go back to my childhood one more time, I mean, you know, the X-Files would have like Monsters of the Weeks and alien type stuff. And it's playing in that realm, and I think it's playing with it and subverting it in some ways to you know, to a satisfactory way.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I mean, I do like the personal story that is being told. Like, you have everything on that macro level, but then once you get into her story and how that relates to what she's dealing with and the trauma in her life.
Yeah, I'm curious to rewatch it, knowing what went down between her and her friend.
Yeah.
You know, her backstory is very dark.
It's very dark.
Very sad.
Yeah.
And how does that make me look at her differently? And, you know, the satisfaction that she's going for, the solace that she is searching for, does the movie give that to her? And if so, am I happy with that? And if it doesn't, am I happy with that? I'm trying not to say too much,
I
but
know.
it's a wild ending.
And that's the thing I struggled with, was that ending. Not saying, I mean, not to give away too much, but I'm like, okay, where, as far as like, you know, where that leaves her character as far as like her state of mind.
Well, she has a catharsis, right?
Yes.
Like there is a relief in exploring her past trauma, and then we have the ending.
Yeah.
And does that ending negate the catharsis?
Yeah, and that's the thing I struggle with. That ending, I did kind of struggle with that. What's your rating for this one?
So we're the B&B show.
Yeah.
You know, if we like something, we give it a B+. If we don't like something, we give it a B-. And I definitely had a good time with this movie, even if I struggled with elements of it. So I have to recommend it.
Okay.
It's on streaming. It's on Hulu.
Yeah.
Just hit play. Make up your own mind. B+.
I agree. I think the idea and the concept of this movie is a gimmick, and sometimes that word can be a good or a bad thing. For me, I like the experiment of that. To see if it could work. So I recommend this as well. I think it's a B+ for people to at least seek this one out and make their own decision for it as well. So yeah, those are our thoughts on No One Will Save You. So when we return, we're going to look at our next film, The Creator. Stay right there.
Every minute counts in a poison emergency. That's why Poison Help is standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in over 100 languages. Save Poison Help as a contact in your phone today. Call your local Poison Center at 1-800-222-1222.
Shipley, it's Howell. Answer the phone. Shipley, I know you're there.
Colonel.
Taylor, where's Shipley?
I'm with him right now. He's in pretty bad shape.
All right, listen to me. Did you locate the weapon?
Yeah, it's here. I'm with it.
Describe it.
It's a kid. It's a kid. They make it into some kind of kid. That's the weapon.
What?
Colonel, look.
I can't reach you. You have to bring it to me. Do you understand?
No, Shipley can't move. I mean, he's not looking good at all. Police are everywhere. I don't know how I'm getting out right now. I don't even have an exit strategy right now.
Then you know what you have to do. Kill it.
What? Look, Colonel, How?
Joshua is given the order to kill the weapon created by the AI in the form of a child in the latest sci-fi epic, The Creator, from Gareth Edwards. So, Brad, Gareth Edwards, he's back. He's best known for, I guess most people know him from Rogue One, Star Wars.
His last movie.
His last movie. Of course, I came to know him from Monsters. I like that indie movie that he made, and of course, Godzilla 2014 version. So now he's back. And I struggle with this movie as well. I like the idea. I was looking forward to this movie.
It's gorgeous.
It's a beautiful. It's a gorgeous looking film. I loved how the movie was made, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. But outside of like the familiarity of some of the concept and the ideas, because it feels like he's pulling from a lot of different ideas that we've seen in sci-fi movies before. Like, what are some of your thoughts as you were watching The Creator?
I kept waiting for it to get better. I think it is a solid movie, and from a craft point of view, it is astonishing. But as a narrative, it's so basic. And a little muddy, you know, this concept of the AI creating a super weapon in the form of this child. I don't quite understand how the child is a super weapon. I don't understand really the strata of AI that we see throughout this movie. You know, there are, you know, like the worker robots, which are, you know, they look very much like droids, and then there's like the cyborg situations, and then there's like this next level AI, and then there's this child who can grow that can physically age.
Yeah.
But what really separates these classes of robots seems to be nothing. They all kind of interact the same way. And the plot of him protecting this AI child from the American government who want to destroy it, that storyline is so ancient, right? It's such a dusty tale, and how that little AI child becomes a stand-in for his own child. It's just not exciting. It is just. It is just tired.
I mean, it goes back to what I was saying too about it's kind of relying on a lot of these sci-fi concepts that we've seen in movies year after year, decades after decades, going back to the 80s and the 90s. I mean, from whether it's the Lone Wolf and Cub storyline with the kid, or whether we've seen that in Terminator 2, we've seen all these ideas in Aliens. We've seen all these ideas in other movies, and I'm not even saying that because it's something that's familiar doesn't mean that it's bad, but it's
what
not
would have
really
benefited this movie?
reinventing that. What's that?
If it had been dialogue free.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, let's take this film's dialogue away and give it to the last movie we reviewed.
Yeah.
And I think if you were just to look at this movie play out as a silent picture, I think it would be much more enjoyable.
Yeah. And I mean, Gareth Edwards is a director that I like, and I like the aesthetic that he's going for, kind of mixing, almost kind of that near future reality that we're seeing, where he's kind of mixing, the sci-fi elements with the droids and the robots with almost like that Vietnam feel.
But I feel like the way that it co-opts Vietnam War imagery is a little ugly.
You think so? Okay.
And complicated, and it makes me feel icky at times, right?
Okay.
And I couldn't get past that either. At the same time, it's gorgeous, and the way that they shot this film, like you were alluding to earlier, where they just go and they make the movie, and then they pass it off to their animators afterwards, and then they fill in the background, and fill in the droids to keep that budget down. This movie looks as expensive as Dial of Destiny and costs like a third the budget.
And that's the thing that I don't want to get lost. Even though I didn't really, the narrative of the story didn't really work for me, I love the filmmaking aspect of it, the way they were able to keep the budget low, the way they actually are incorporating real production, real sets, on location. I think all of that stuff is fascinating, and I think it's a turning point. Hopefully, it's a turning point with how productions are being made in Hollywood now as well. So we can get away from the green screens and the volumes, and maybe we can start bringing some of these budgets now and make things kind of
you can put the money to location shooting.
Exactly, because I think that's something that we've kind of been missing in films,
especially science fiction.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, a lot of the volume. We're tired of the volume.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit. What's your rating for this one?
This is tough. I do feel like if you're going to see it, you should see it on a big screen, and hopefully you can still see it on a big screen.
Yeah.
I think it plays much larger much better in a theater than it does at home. At the same time, am I going to watch this movie again? So I'm glad I saw it. So I'd recommend watching it once, so it gets a B+, but it gets a B- for a repeat watch.
I know, I struggle with that too, because like I said, if we had that sliding scale of B, it would definitely be that for me. I think I'm going to side on the B+ as well, because I think it is worth watching at least one time. Will I ever revisit this movie? I don't believe so. But I do want to praise it for its filmmaking and for what Gareth Edwards was trying to do with that as well.
Yeah, hopefully it's another step in the evolution of sci-fi filmmaking.
I do. I hope so as well. So that remains to be seen. So those are our thoughts on The Creator. When we return, we are going to take a look at the 10th installment of the Saw franchise. Stay right there.
After rent and power, I can get groceries. It's sad to say food comes last. Anna from Texas. No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
This is all your fault. You brought me into this. You brought me into this. Get it, Gabby. Oh, no. I'm not the one addicted to oxy, am I?
Gabriella's next. What?
Sometimes we get sucked into things that are against our nature. Drugs are as vicious as they are powerful.
We all have free will. Gabriella had her own free will. And if you can't handle this, how will you handle the rest of our work?
Amanda struggles with the sympathy she feels for one of their captors as it recounts her own demons she has fought in her past in the 10th installment of the horror franchise, Saw 10. Bryan.
Saw 10, man.
Saw 10,
I know
Saw
you've been
X.
waiting for this.
I have been. It was one of my most anticipated films of the year. I love this franchise. I love how it switches back on itself. The plots, happen simultaneously sometimes. Sometimes they're prequels. This one is a prequel. It's the 10th installment, but it takes place after the first movie, but shortly before the second film.
Yeah.
Although you wouldn't know it from the actual script.
No. I'm curious now how much time was in between the first and the second movie.
Right.
Yeah.
If I had a disappointment about Saw 10 is that it's not as convoluted as it could be. It's pretty much just like a chapter that's been removed from the timeline and just told at the end. And I don't think in doing that, it really colors the rest of the franchise in any significant way. And that's a little bit of a bummer.
Well, I know you're kind of bummed by that. But I really did like the fact that this kind of felt separate from those other movies. But then how they try to insert it with some things they do at the end with some post-credit scenes.
I loved it. I got excited.
Which I thought was kind of funny.
The post-credit scenes, maybe like the most exciting scene in the whole movie for me. Yeah. Tobin Bell is so good as John Kramer.
He's great. I like him a lot.
Jigsaw.
Yeah.
And I love that, they killed him in the third movie. But when it came to the fourth, they were like, well, we got to figure out how to play with this timeline to keep Tobin Bell around because he's the heart and soul of this franchise.
Yeah.
And this franchise does have a heart and a soul.
It does.
It is talking about important things. This is a politically activated movie.
Yeah.
This is a direct attack at the American healthcare system. We all need to be paying attention to John Kramer.
I'm telling you, well, I don't know if we should be paying attention to how he resolves these issues.
It's a metaphor, Bryan. The extremity of this film represents our anger and frustration towards the medical care system in this country.
But it's interesting because it's weird that the Saw franchise has kind of been talking about these issues, especially in some of the later films, with dealing with healthcare and the medical field and stuff like that.
It was there from the beginning. It was there in Saw 1.
It was there?
We just weren't as activated as we should have been, Bryan.
Okay.
But this one is speaking so much to it. I mean, the whole movie's about it. John Kramer, he has terminal cancer. Mm-hmm. He needs a quick fix solution. He thinks he finds it in Mexico, and then those doctors. Yeah. All they do is they take his money, right? And they betrayed the wrong person.
They did. You know what's interesting about the Saw movies? Can you, and I guess I'll ask you this question about the character of John Kramer. Now, in this movie, they position him as a very sympathetic character, but he's also a psychopath.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But can you see him as a hero in these movies, particularly with this movie, with how he was wronged by these people?
Well, he is the hero of this film.
But can we see him?
I mean, it depends on your own value, value.
That's true.
And what you think is what extremes you would go to get quote unquote justice. Yeah. I think he is absolutely a psychopath, but I do think also that he's the hero of this film and that he does represent a pain that is very real in this country, and we should take notice of that pain. But he's still putting people in traps and having their jaws ripped off and stuff. So,
I know. Yeah, and some of these traps, whew, I mean, not as bad as maybe some of the ones in some of the previous movies.
I actually think this movie's pretty restrained compared to some of the other more torture porn movies.
So, I mean, I was a little trepidatious. You know how I am when it comes to
don't like
stuff.
gore.
Yeah, but so, you know, I was trying to look at the corner of the screen, like when this thing started to get a little hectic, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It actually was getting more into the story of John Kramer.
And this
that's what kind of brought me
the
in.
movie that has the most Tobin Bell in it, and that is just such a treat because he is so good in this role. And
we get Amanda back. You know, no de-aging.
And maybe some other people. I wish we had gotten maybe some other people earlier on in the movie. I wish that the ties to the rest of the franchise were more clear, and this wasn't just kind of a side quest for Jigsaw.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it. I mean, I don't know how much you could have kind of brought it and kind of looped it in
Give
with
me
the
the
rest
script, Bryan. I'm ready to do it.
Because it's so far removed from the last movie. But like I said, I mean, outside of those differences that we have, I still really enjoyed the movie. What's your rating for this one?
So far, this is my favorite movie of the show. I give it a B+. I want Saw 11.
Yeah, we may get it.
Did well. Saw 10 did well.
Fingers crossed if you still have them. So those are our thoughts on Saw 10. When we come back, we're going to take a look at Martin Scorsese's latest. Stay right there.
Today's cancer research is tomorrow's victory. A victory that is there for the taking. Grab it.
Now that was a great halftime speech. Let's go win.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
It's so sad.
It's not.
Shows itself to you that Bill Smith didn't take the proper care of Minnie the way he could have. To have her sick and die, take her head rights and her land. That oil, which should go to her sister as your wife, well, he's taking money that by rights should go to Molly. The mother, Lizzie. She's not in good shape. She won't last. Most Osages don't live past 50. With these women dying, with how Osage suffer from illness, you have to make it the head rights come to you. You see?
William Hale slowly deceits and manipulates his nephew, but does he really need that much convincing in Martin Scorsese's riveting epic, Killers of the Flower Moon? All right, Brad, Martin Scorsese's back on the big screen. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this movie. Let's just get this out the way. The runtime is 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. And with trailers, easily over 4 hours.
Yes, and I'm not even going to say like, oh, you know, this movie is so captivating that you don't even feel the runtime. No, for me, I felt the runtime. But I mean, how did that runtime work for you watching this?
I mean, I knew the runtime going into it. So I go into a certain kind of headspace when I see we're going to watch an epic. Like when I walk in to see, you know, Lawrence of Arabia at the AFI Silver, you know, it's a long movie. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to settle down, I'm going to enjoy it. It's an opportunity to live in the craft of Martin Scorsese for 4 hours. I'm A-okay with it. It could have been 6 hours. Does it feel long? Yes, but that's what I'm here for, to live this movie. Doesn't bother me at all. Especially when it's good.
Yes, I have some issues with the film. I don't think that the thing I struggle with the most, and I guess we can kind of get into it, is the perspective and the point of view. And it's hard to really have that as a criticism when we know going into the movie that it's going to be told from the perspective of the
Killers of the Flower Moon.
The Killers of the Flower Moon.
I feel you, and I struggled with the perspective throughout the entire film. And I think it's totally valid to say that this movie could be told from, you know, Lily Gladstone's character, the Osage people's point of view, and that is a point of view that is robbed and erased from history. Now, is Martin Scorsese the person to do that? I don't necessarily think so. Is this actually a question of representation? Probably yes. But here we are with a Martin Scorsese movie, and the book Killers of the Flower Moon was mostly about the rise of the FBI.
Exactly.
And the Jesse Plemons character was at one point going to be the in for this movie, and Leonardo DiCaprio was going to play that. And I think that movie would have been atrocious and very much the white savior movie. This movie is a Scorsese film. Scorsese has always been obsessed with the psychopaths, with the sick people, with the evil in this country. And he's exploring this corrupted state that is America through the lens of atrocity.
Exactly, and going into that, and that's why even though I struggled with the point of view of the film, knowing Martin Scorsese and knowing his aesthetic and knowing his sensibilities, you know, with movies like Goodfellas and Casino and other movies like that, and what he likes to focus on, and looking at some of those like darker like evil
from
aspects.
Mean Streets on, he's been fascinated by the bad men.
Exactly. So, and I was interested to see that aspect of this movie. It just, as I was watching the movie, especially the way it starts off, and we really, like you were saying, live with the Osage people, and then we start to kind of see that turn as the movie kept going along.
As they start murdering all the Osage people.
And maybe that's the point, because Scorsese wants us to live with these bad people to really feel how
the movie is erasing them. Like the narrative is erasing them violently and grotesquely. And Robert De Niro's character is a horror, right? And I don't think we've actually seen a Robert De Niro quite like the Robert De Niro that we get in Killers of the Flower Moon.
I think now everybody's talking about Lily Gladstone.
She's great.
And she's great. And Leonardo DiCaprio.
He's so good playing this dumb maniac.
Nobody's talking about Robert De Niro. And Robert De Niro is amazing in this movie. Amazing in this movie. So, I mean, we talk about Oscars. We're getting to that time of the year. I can't see his name being left out of the conversation.
I really love how this film progresses to its climax and then sort of robs you of, I'm going to use this word again, the catharsis, right? Like we never really get Lily Gladstone processing what her husband says on the stand. You know, and this is history, so, you know, it's not really a spoiler, but if you don't want to know anything about it, maybe just like tune out your ears for a few seconds. But when he confesses to what he has done, I mean, this is an apocalypse on her life. And we don't see her process that. And I kind of hate that. At the same time, the way that the movie then switches and tells this story from an outside perspective, the last couple of minutes of this movie where the story then becomes a story within the story.
Within the story. I thought that was, I didn't know how to feel about that. But the more I think about it, I appreciate the direction that Scorsese took.
I think it's ingenious. I think it not only shows how stories of slaughter and atrocity become our entertainment, like our obsession with true crime right now is rampant. I think it also invites the audience that is watching Killers of the Flower Moon to reflect on their own culpability in consuming these stories.
Interesting. I like that point. What's your rating for this one?
I loved this movie. Absolutely a B+. One of the best of the year, in my opinion.
I can't say that I loved it. I do have issues with what we talked about, but I can't deny the direction by Scorsese, and I didn't get a chance to talk about some of the filmmaking techniques that I saw in this movie that I really appreciate to show why he is one of the great filmmakers, and he really is. So even with some of my issues I have with the film, I have to give it a B+. I mean, it's a story that's worth that needed to be told, and it's worth people to watch.
Better than Saw 10?
Slightly. So those are our thoughts on Killers of the Flower Moon. So let's recap what we discussed today. So No One Will Save You, we gave that a B+ for both me and Brad. The Creator, we gave that a B+. Oh, am I seeing a theme here? Saw 10, we also gave that a B+. And Killers of the Flower Moon, we give that a B+ as well.
A lot of good films out there.
A lot of good films. As much as we kind of had disagreed on some stuff, we still gave them all a B+. Crazy, crazy. Anyway, so thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.